Evan Mazza back at you for another edition of Mazza on Sports, talking all things the NFL Conference Championship games and the Super Bowl preview. And we'll also talk more. We'll also talk a little bit about Monday Night Raw from Monday and just a teeny bit about the Rumble. I'll preview the Rumble on Friday. And we'll talk about the NFL coaching carousel, what's going on there. We had some more latest news about the coaching carousel and new head coaches being named and coordinators leaving or going somewhere. And we'll also talk about, like I said, the Super Bowl. And we'll also talk about other things like Bill Belichick. Obviously, he's been in the news recently. But, well, not him, but we'll begin today with the NFL Conference Championship games as the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots are on their way to San Francisco for the Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. And obviously, the big story is this is a rematch. Obviously, we're going to hear nonstop about the Seahawks and the Patriots in Super Bowl 40, I believe it was in 49, and the ending of that game. So obviously, all we've been hearing is rematch. But obviously, these are new teams. It's been a decade, so it's a brand new thing. That game doesn't really mean much to the grand scheme of things of this game, but we do have to talk about how they got here. How did the Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks get to this moment where they are each now 60 minutes away from achieving their dreams of becoming a Super Bowl champion? How is it that Mike McDonald and Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks are 60 minutes away from a world championship? How is it that Drake May and Mike Vrabel are 60 minutes away from world champions? And the bottom line is this: they had strong run games. Seattle's run game, though, was inconsistent throughout the season, but they do have a running game if they use it. Strong running games, strong play action, strong offensive line play, strong defensive line play, and good front pass rush. And like I said, play action, roll your quarterback out, and get them comfortable. It doesn't always need to be. I think you look at the two coaches, right? Two defensive coaches. I think what you're reminded of when you see teams like Seattle and New England is that they play old school football. This isn't the high scoring offense that we've known over the last many years. This isn't Cincinnati when they made their run. It's not Baltimore, who have been a high powered offense, high flying offense. This isn't the Kansas City Chiefs. This isn't the Buffalo Bills. This isn't the Philadelphia Eagles when they're on their game. This isn't the Detroit Lions who throw it all over the place and are well balanced. This is a run the football, pound with the offensive line, win low scoring, tight games, and win on defensive line, get to the quarterback, stop the run, and get to the quarterback. These are two teams that would have been very good 15, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. These are two teams that in those days, years ago, you would have looked at them and said, oh, wow, they're a great team. They're a great team. These two teams are well balanced. They play good defense, and their quarterback, Sir Sam Darnold, turns the football over. He did lead the league in turnovers this season, so I can't really say they don't turn the ball over, but these are quarterbacks that throw the ball on time, rhythm, roll outside, just find your best receivers, manage the game, which is never a bad thing. I never like it when people say, oh, he's a game manager. He's a game manager. No, being a game manager is what being a quarterback is all about. It's what being a quarterback is all about. And I think Drake May and Sam Darnold have done a good job of that all season long, especially Sam Darnold over the last 2 years. We get to New England, and they're gaming us the Denver Broncos. What was it? Snow, wind, cold. It was a blizzard. It turned into snow. It turned into a blizzard in Denver. And New England won the game 10-7. Was it impressive? No. But they were tough. They were balanced. Drake May he only threw 80 yards passing, but he didn't turn the ball over. He ran the ball well. He had like 3 or 4 big runs, Drake May, one of them for a touchdown. Drake May had a run for a touchdown and another run that won the game, that sealed it, that won the game. They didn't turn the ball over. They stuffed the run. They forced Jarrett Stidham to be. Obviously, they had a bit of a. They had the advantage there. They had an advantage there with Jarrett Stidham playing quarterback, and you saw it. You saw it. I mean, Stidham did have his moment with the touchdown pass early in the game, but aside from that, nothing much with Jarrett Stidham. Can you blame him? No. Again, I don't fault Jarrett Stidham. I don't fault. What I said last week is gonna look. You'll see it now. The Denver Broncos are gonna look back on this season and say, "Wow, if we didn't have our quarterback, we probably would have won." And I actually agree. I think if the Denver Broncos would have had Drake May, would have had Bo Nix, they would have won. I truly think that. I do think Denver was the better football team if they had Drake May, but unfortunately they didn't. But you saw in this game, New England just kind of grind it out, play good defense, make the plays when you had to on offense in that kind of condition, that kind of environment. They knew that Denver was going to struggle to score points with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. Which is why it brings me to Sean Payton. When he goes for a 4th down up 7-0, just kick the field goal. Sean Payton is Sean Payton. This is the same man who did an onside kick in the Super Bowl to begin the second half, and it paid off. They got the ball, and they ended up winning the game. But you can't constantly do that, especially when you have a backup quarterback at home with a really good defense. And Denver's defense did a good job overall. You just take the field goal, take the 10-0 lead, let your defense do its thing, get your quarterback comfortable, get your quarterback not in a pressure situation. But unfortunately, he did. And it came back, and he wouldn't be the only coach to go for it when you probably should kick the field goal on the same day. We'll get to him. The thing is, you can't be aggressive all the time. You just got to take your points. And Sean Payton needed to take his points there. You have a field goal in your back pocket. Kick the field goal on your back pocket, and go take your points. 10-0 lead, second quarter. You got a good defense. Let it go from there. But instead, you put yourself in a bad spot. And New England ends up winning the game because of it. Because you didn't score your points. You didn't take the 10-0 lead. Instead, you gave momentum back to Denver. And Denver ended up winning. And your momentum back to New England. And New England won the game from there. You got to take your field goal there. If he had Bo Nix, maybe you could say, well, all right, you had Bo. All right, you let Bo Nix try to get your first down. Maybe even if you had Bo Nix, you kick the field goal. Even if you had Bo Nix, you kick the field goal. Because again, 10-0 lead at home, AFC Championship. And that's the thing. That's the thing that bothers you the most. This is the AFC Championship game. This isn't a regular season game. This isn't a 7-game series like baseball or football or hockey or soccer or football or basketball or hockey. This isn't a series. This is one game. You get one game playoff. That's it. You get a 1-game playoff. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. You get a 1-game playoff. You get 60 minutes, one game to determine whether you're advancing to the next round or you're going home and you're packing your bags on Monday morning. That's all you get. That's all you get. You get one game. So you got to take your points and you got to score when you got it, especially in that kind of situation when you have a backup quarterback and you're at home and you have a great defense. Get the lead, extend your lead, 10-0, and go from there. But Sean Payton decides to go for it to get 7. It bites him in the butt, and New England wins the game from there. I actually blame Sean Payton more than I blame the Denver Broncos offense and more than I blame the defense and more than I blame their players. Because Sean Payton didn't put his team in the best position to win with going for a 4th down. He just simply didn't. He's a great coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach, but he didn't put his team in the best position to win because he decided to go for it for some reason. You don't need to go for it. You don't need to go for it. All you have to do is kick the field goal. All you have to do is kick the field goal, and you gave New England's momentum right back. You gave New England momentum right back in the game, and New England ends up winning from there. Drake May gets a touchdown run. They get the field goal later on in the game in the third quarter. Jared Stidham from then on out struggles in the game after he actually got off to a decent start. Throws an interception. The Patriots defense holds the Broncos running game to only a measly several yards. RJ Harvey gets only 37 yards rushing. And New England grinds it out, a tough, snowy win. And they're on their way to the AFC Championship game. And that's the part. And that is the sad part for Denver, is that you probably win if you kick the field goal, and you would have gone to Super Bowl with Jared Stidham as your quarterback. And I do think that's, again, it's still a man, if we just didn't do this, but New England, it was the better team. New England was the better team without Bo Nix. New England was the better team. And I do think the better team won this game. They were just a tougher team. They grinded it out, and they were able to pull out a win. Was it pretty? No. Will they need to be better if they want to stand a chance against Seattle in 2 weeks? Absolutely. You're not beating Seattle with just 10 points. But New England has won all these tight games. They have defied a lot of doubters. Did they win a relatively weak AFC this year? Yes, they did. Let's be honest. They did. Baltimore down year, Kansas City down year, Buffalo second place this year, made the playoffs, won a wild card, won a playoff game, but didn't win the division this year. There just something really wasn't right. Cincinnati's defense was terrible, cost them a playoff spot again. The Texans had a great defense, but an inconsistent offense. Jacksonville was good, but you didn't really buy them as a Super Bowl contender. Same thing with the Los Angeles Chargers. So the AFC was kind of relatively up in the air and wide open for anybody to win. Wasn't exactly the strongest year for the AFC. And yes, the Patriots had a not so great schedule. They did take advantage of that. And they won a sloppy game the week before against Houston. Really, New England's playoffs, I can't really pinpoint the Patriots having an impressive playoff performance. Any of their 3 wins. Really impressive. They're winning against the Chargers. Not that, they're winning against the Chargers. They had to grind that out too. Close win. They got after Justin Herbert and sacked him a bunch of times. But again, Herbert's offensive line was just nothing. Texans, they took advantage of the Texans turning the ball over 5 or so times. And CJ Stroud was terrible. And then you had the Broncos game where they had no quarterback. Their backup was playing, and Sean Payton kind of messed it up with going from a 4th down. So so you could say a lot of things about New England. You could say a lot of things about the Patriots and their schedule and their road to the Super Bowl. The bottom line is, though, they got there. Someone had to get there. Someone had to get to the AFC. Someone had to get to the Super Bowl this year to represent the AFC. Would it have been Denver if it was Bo Nix? I think so. I think it would have been the Denver Broncos if Bo Nix would have played. Absolutely, I think it would have been. But you can't look at it that way. He didn't play because he was hurt. He unfortunately hurt his ankle. So someone has to win. And it's not New England's fault that the Ravens had a down year. It's not their fault that the Bills were good but not great. It's not their fault the Chiefs had a down year. It's just not. It's not their fault the Texans' offense was It's not their fault. There's nothing they can do about it. All they can do is control what they can control. It's not their fault that Bo Nix got hurt. They can only control what they can control, and that's themselves. So you give them all the credit in the world. They went out there, controlled what they controlled, and they wound up winning the AFC. And Mike Vrabel in year 2 goes to a Super Bowl with the Patriots, with his former team. He's the first coach ever to both play and coach one team to the Super Bowl. And he came in year 2 after spending about a year away from football after he was fired by the Tennessee Titans. Well, actually, really, he wasn't. Actually, no, he didn't spend 1 year away from football. He was actually with the Cleveland Browns coaching staff. He was with the Cleveland Browns coaching staff. He gets his dream job. New England fired Gerard Mayo, and he was off home He wasn't drafted by the Patriots, but he won. He had his success with the Patriots. He had the peak of his playing career with the Patriots. He went back home and he became the Patriots head coach. And now in year one, and I'm sorry, not year two, year one, he's in the Super Bowl with the Patriots. And Drake May, year two, is now quarterbacking a team in the Super Bowl. And I believe he's the second youngest quarterback to go to a Super Bowl. Russell Wilson's the youngest. Roethlisberger is the other youngest. So I think Drake May is the second youngest. I think he's around that area. Russell obviously got the Super Bowl in year two, 2013. Roethlisberger got the Super Bowl in year two, 2005. This is Drake May, second year. He's in the Super Bowl. So he's right there as the youngest. I don't think he's the youngest. That's still Russell, but he's either the second youngest or the third youngest. But he's in the Super Bowl now in year two. Mike Vrabel, in his first year as Patriots coach, gets the Patriots to the Super Bowl, and they have a tough task ahead of them because they're going to be underdogs. Let me just check the Super Bowl odds for this game. I think the Seattle Seahawks, they open up as favorites, minus 230 against the Patriots, the Seahawks. I think that puts them at, last I checked, they were 4.5 point favorites, the Seahawks. Last I checked, they were about 4.5 point favorites. Yeah, 4.5. The line is still 4.5. At least that's what it says here. So the line is still 4.5. They're gonna be. I think by the time we get to kickoff, they're gonna be a pretty big underdog. Because that's a great Seattle team that just seems destined to win. Like it just seems like it's destiny for them to win the Super Bowl, Seattle. But we've said it before with the Patriots, right? They go into the Super Bowl as underdogs. No one really thinks that they can win, and then they win. 2001 with the Rams, no one really thought they could win. No one thought they could win that one. They won that one. I would suffice to say in 2014, of course, the last time they faced Seattle, I think we all thought that was going to be the coronation of the Seahawk dynasty, the Legion of Boom, and they went back to back. Didn't happen. I think even in 2018, when they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl, and the Rams had this great offense, we thought the Rams would win. Didn't happen. Patriots defense held the Rams offense to like 3 points or so that day. Patriots have defied the odds before in the Super Bowl before. Mike Vrabel knows a thing or two about it. They've defied the odds before in the Super Bowl. Let's see if they can do it again. Because Seattle is a tough, tall task. They're a tough, tall task to beat. This is a team that is loaded with talent, has a good balanced offense. Sam Darnold has played as well as any quarterback in this postseason so far. Darnold has been terrific in this postseason through 2 games, and this was a quarterback who struggled in the limelight with the Jets, who struggled in 2 straight big games last year with the Vikings in the regular season finale against the Lions in the playoffs against the Rams, and he has completely flipped the script in year one. He has completely flipped the script in year one. With Seattle. He has completely flipped the script. Sam Darnold has now become a big game quarterback in just one season after last year where he struggled in back-to-back big games. And people said, oh, man, that was a fluke. This isn't the real Sam Darnold. That's the real Sam Darnold. What you saw in 2024 most of the year, that wasn't him. The last 2 games, that was him. That's the real Sam Darnold. He has completely flipped the script. And last night and on Sunday, Sam Darnold in the Seahawks win over the Los Angeles Rams. Sam Darnold in their 31-27 win. He played the best game of his entire career in the NFC Championship game. And there's all you could say is he goes 25 of 36, 69 completion percentage, almost a 70, 346 yards, and 3 touchdown passes. He was impressive. And remember, last year, Rams was awful against the Rams in the playoffs. Awful. Earlier this season against the Rams, awful. For 3 quarters against the Rams, last time they met in the regular season, awful. 4th quarter overtime, he was fantastic. And through 4 quarters today on Sunday, he was again fantastic. So not only did he get the big game monkey off his back, he got the Los Angeles Rams monkey off his back. You can't say the Rams own him now. I mean, what was it? 1 touchdown and 7 or so interceptions, 8 interceptions in his career against the Rams. Can't say it anymore. Can't say it anymore. Because in back-to-back games, in the biggest games of the season for the Seahawks, Sam Darnold came up huge against the Rams the last time they met in the regular season, and then the NFC Championship game, and the week before against the week before against who they, oh my God, why did I forget? Why am I forgetting who they faced? Wow. See, look at that. My memory's already fading away. The 49ers. See, my memory's fading away already. I'm getting old. I'm sorry. But they played the San Francisco 49ers, and again, Darnold was really good that day. Didn't put up eye-popping numbers, but he was efficient, and he didn't turn the ball over. He was accurate, and he had a pretty solid game. Last Sunday, he was asked to put the team on his back. He put them on his back, and he led them all, and he's now led them to the Super Bowl. And he is now 1 win away. He becomes the first quarterback drafted in the first round from the 2018 draft to go to the Super Bowl. Not Lamar Jackson, not Josh Allen, not Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold is. And Sam Darnold is now 1 win away from, I would think, completing the greatest turnaround we've ever seen from any quarterback. I truly believe that if he wins the Super Bowl, Sam Darnold does, it is the greatest career turnaround for a quarterback we've ever seen in this game. Better than Steve Young and better than Alex Smith. Those are the 2 quarterback turnaround guys that I could think of. The reason why Steve Young failed in Tampa Bay was because of organizational malfunction, and he was able to, or dysfunction, and he was able to go to San Francisco and learn for a few years under Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, sitting behind one of the greatest coaches of all time and the greatest quarterback of all time until Tom Brady showed up. Baker Mayfield's another one, but Baker hasn't gotten to the Super Bowl yet. He's had a great career turnaround. Alex Smith, of course, was a number 1 overall pick, first round bust for San Francisco for 6 years. And then Jim Harbaugh came in, turned them around. But you look at where Darnold was at with the Jets for 4 years, for 3-4 years with the Jets, the seeing ghosts, the mono, right? When he got mono, seeing ghosts, all the promise that he had coming into the Jets as the guy that would finally be the guy for the Jets, with all the hype and ability he had coming into the draft. There was a debate of whether he should be the number 1 pick or should Baker be the number 1 pick. Baker, of course, ended up being the number 1 pick. He completely just struggles in he had his moments with New York. He had a very solid rookie season. Second half of 2019 was pretty good, but it was inconsistencies. He looked off. He looked puzzled. And like I said, the moment he said, ironically, he's facing the Patriots in the Super Bowl, but I keep pointing to the seeing ghosts comment. That really was a comment that stuck with him for a long time. And I know he says he doesn't really think about it. He doesn't really care about it. He actually said the other day he forgot about it. He said after the game that he forgot. And I have no doubt that he's kind of blocked it out from his memory. But I also think it's also still there in the back of his head. The amount of people that counted him out and said, I don't want to play for this guy anymore. Why would I play for this guy? I think it was Deion Sanders before Deion became the coach at Jackson State. I think it was Deion who said after that game, I believe it was Deion Sanders who said, I would never play for a guy like that, who says something like that. I would never play for that guy. I would leave. I quit. It was his butt fumble moment. It was to Jet fandom to what Mark Sanchez's butt fumble was. It really was. And I never thought, or not a lot of people, or myself included, thought he would ever recover from it. I thought he was done from there because his reputation and the perception and how people saw him changed from that moment onwards. And it was only year 3 of his career. It was only year 3, but the 2019 Jets were a disappointment. The 2020 Jets were a disaster. You know, it was a moment that stuck with him forever. And now you fast forward 5 years later, and he's what the turnaround he's made has been incredible. It's been incredible. And to me, nothing showed it more than Sunday against a great Rams team and that great coach and that Hall of Fame he went toe to toe with and Matt Stafford had a great game of his own, man. Matt Stafford had an amazing game of his own right. Matt Stafford deserved to win on Sunday. 22 of 35, 62 completion percentage, 374 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Remember, in the last matchup they had, Stafford threw for over 400 plus yards. Stafford was incredible the last time they met. So Sam Darnold has, remember, the Seahawks have a great defense, and Matt Stafford completely lit them up the last 2 games, in the last game, the regular season game, and then the NFC Championship game. So it was Sam Darnold who was called upon to carry the Seahawks and go toe-to-toe with a future Hall of Fame quarterback in the 2 biggest games of the year for the Seattle Seahawks. He had to do that, and he did it. And 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, nobody saw that coming. Nobody could have envisioned him doing that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Nobody could have envisioned him doing that. And he did it. He outplayed and he was able to outduel and outplay and beat a Hall of Fame quarterback in the NFC Championship game and in 2 of the biggest games of the season for the Seahawks. And he did it with the best game of his career on Sunday. He was fantastic. It was almost like everything, all of the hype and the build that he had coming out of college was all culminated on Sunday. Now, I say culminated, but there's one more game to go, and it's the biggest game ever. But I don't know if Darnold will play as good of a game in the Super Bowl as he did on Sunday, especially against the better defense. But it really felt like the culmination of everything that people hyped up about him coming out of college. And you see it finally living up to it and finally watching it and finally seeing it. Oh, that's why we looked at him in a high regard heading into that draft. That's why some of us thought he should have been the number 1 overall pick. That's why when he was drafted by the Jets, a lot of us thought this was the Jets' next best thing. This was their franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 or so years. And when it didn't work, it certainly was a bummer. However, I will say it's this Sam Darnold, what we're seeing now, speaks more about the Vikings than the Jets. Look, the Jets will be the talk because they're the butt of the joke, and it's funnier to knock the Jets for this. But the reality is this. The Minnesota Vikings have more. We need to say more about the Vikings, and the Vikings have more to look at than the Jets do. The Vikings saw the best of Sam Darnold. They saw the best of him last year. They saw what a really good Sam Darnold looks like. They saw that last year. He was fantastic last year for the Vikings. Fantastic. In a year when nobody thought he would do anything. Nobody thought, and not only did he play good, he was fantastic. And the Vikings made the playoffs. Look, it's tough. They won a lot of games, and they weren't able to win the division because the Lions were so good that year, last year. And then the last 2 games happened against the Lions and against the Rams. And the Vikings said, thank you for your game. Thank you for your season. But we have J.J. McCarthy, and we're going to ride with him. What the Vikings should have done, and I felt this way in the offseason last year. So this isn't hindsight from me. To me, the Vikings should have re-signed Darnold and let J.J. McCarthy sit for a year or 2. J.J. McCarthy was coming off a torn ACL and MCL in his rookie season and hadn't played a regular season game. And you're asking him to go out there and lead the Vikings to the playoffs. And this past season for J.J. was essentially his rookie season. He only played 1 preseason game the year before. So this was essentially his rookie season. And coming off a season where the Vikings were so good, and so that's a lot of pressure on him. So the best thing the Vikings should have done was re-sign Darnold and let JJ just kind of sit for a bit and get healthy. But instead, they let him go because, we invested a first-round pick in McCarthy, so let's let him take on this talented team that won, 13 games the year before and made the playoffs? Because we think he can do just as good of a job as Darnold did. And he actually won us a playoff game. Well, that didn't happen because that's a tough ask. And not only was it a tough ask, but J.J. McCarthy had one of the worst seasons we've seen for a quarterback in numbers-wise and play-wise, to the point where people were comparing him to Jamarcus Russell. The Vikings had the worst quarterback play of the entire season and all of 2025 for the entire NFL season. Their quarterback play was so bad this season, from McCarthy to Max Brosmer, and yet they still won 9 games, the Vikings, because their defense was so good. They won 9 games this year. If they would have had Sam Darnold, they'd probably win the NFC North. They probably win the NFC North if they had Sam Darnold. They probably would have won that division. They probably win the NFC North if Darnold was there. But they let him go. He goes to Seattle, and Seattle is now in the Super Bowl. And the Vikings, while they won 9 games, very impressive considering they got little from the quarterback position, they ended up missing the playoffs. Why? Because they had their quarterback right there, and they let him walk out the door. Because they felt that last season was a fluke, that last season that he couldn't replicate the season he had, and that was the peak. And look, to be fair, Sam Darnold didn't technically repeat the performance he had a year ago. He didn't. His numbers are not similar to what they were a year ago, but he still put up some pretty good numbers. He still put up some pretty good numbers for the Seattle Seahawks here. He threw for the Minnesota Vikings a year ago. He threw 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. This year he threw 25 and 14 interceptions. So the interceptions ticked up a bit, still to 14. Like I said, he led the league in turnovers, 102.5 passer rating a year ago, a 99.1. Again, he still put up pretty good numbers. The interceptions obviously ticked up a bit, but he still threw 25 touchdown passes, and he still had a pretty solid season. He still had a pretty good year. So you could say the Vikings were technically right, but his season for Sam Darnold's season was still miles better than anything the Vikings got out of the quarterback position this year. Anything they got. So to me, Sam's performance says more about the Vikings than it does about the Jets. And I know because the Jets never got this version. To their fault or to Sam's fault, whoever you want to blame, the Jets never got. They had the potential. They saw the potential of what Darnold could be, but they never saw this version of him over these that we've seen in Minnesota and now Seattle. They never saw that. They never saw that. And then, of course, it didn't help that that a third head coach was coming in because it was Bowles, then Nagase, and Robert Saleh. Another GM was coming in. So, of course, it was more mixed. It was more changing of chairs or changing of seats and changing of executives and head coaches. There was more change and flux. To put it there, more change and flux for the Jets as per usual, and that kind of and different guys and have different mindsets and look at players differently than the last guy did. And Sam was eventually traded, so to the Carolina Panthers. And look, he didn't work out in Carolina either. It wasn't, he had a nice year in Carolina, one of those years, but overall it didn't work out in Carolina either. He wasn't the guaranteed starter. He wasn't the fresh starter. He had to go to San Francisco for a couple of years. He sat behind their quarterbacks, Garoppolo, Purdy. He learned under Kyle Shanahan. And then he goes to Minnesota where Kevin O'Connell gets the chance to start because of JJ's injury, and he is taken off from there. But it says more about the Vikings than anything else than about the Jets, because the Vikings saw the best version of Darnold and said, we don't want that guy. They said, we don't want that guy. We like J.J. McCarthy. And they won 9 games this year, but they missed the playoffs because they had nothing from their passing game and nothing from the quarterback position. And they get Seattle, and Seattle gets Darnold, and now they're a win away from becoming Super Bowl champions, and he takes them to the Super Bowl. So he's the big story. Darnold's the big story to me for this in this whole Super Bowl week. The rest of this week and then the next week. This whole lead up to the Super Bowl, Sam Darnold is the story. He's the story. He's the guy. His turnaround to me is the greatest turnaround we've ever seen from a quarterback. It really is more than Steve Young and more than Alex Smith, more more than Baker Mayfield, because none of us thought Sam Darnold had this as an NFL quarterback. We all thought Sam's glory days was in college, and the hype surrounding him and the potential and the, oh man, if only, right? That was Darnold, but he is now living up to it. Took a while, but he is now living up to that potential, and he is now one win away from fulfilling the promise that he had coming out of college. So he's the story. And to the people who said that the Seahawks were stupid in letting Geno Smith go for Sam Darnold, you also have eggs on your faces too. Because Geno Smith has had a nice turnaround too as well overall. Obviously, he just had a terrible year this past year, led the league in interceptions, but he has overall been able to turn his career around to at least serviceable. But if you watched, 2024 Sam Darnold was better than anything we saw out of Geno Smith, even in his good years. Sam was the better quarterback, and Sam was the better quarterback then. He certainly is the better quarterback now than Geno Smith. To the game itself, so Sam Darnold is the story. He's the guy. He's the story coming into this. And if he wins the Super Bowl this year, it would complete to me the greatest turnaround we've ever seen from a quarterback. So, and if Jet fans should be happy for him. You can be upset at the Jet front office and ownership. You have every right to, but you should all, especially since he's facing the Patriots, by the way, you should all root for him. Root for Sam Darnold. He's a terrific story. If you're a Jets fan. If you're a Vikings fan, root for him, but also understand he should still be on your team. Number 14 should still be in purple and white and gold. He should still be a Viking. Justin Jefferson should have been catching passes from him this season and not J.J. McCarthy, Max Brosmer, etc. So if you're a Vikings fan, you root for the guy, but also you say, dang, he should have been on our team this year. But such is sports. But to the game itself, and Sean McVay and his fourth down decision. From one coach's fourth down decision to another coach's fourth down decision again. Now, this one's more complicated than Sean Payton's. A lot of Sean's. I'll just say Payton and McVay. This one is more complicated, right? McVay has about 4 minutes or so plus left in the game. He's down by 4. So even if you kick the field goal, you might not get the ball back. And you have Matthew Stafford. So let's just go for the touchdown. Let's go for the touchdown. Let's get the lead. With Peyton, it was like, okay, it's early in the game. We do have the lead. I have a backup quarterback. Let's just, that one's more obvious. So this one's more complicated. I still think McVay should have kicked the field goal, and here's why. It's still 4.5 or so minutes left in the game. You're down by 4. So if you get the ball back, you have to go down the field and score a touchdown. If you get the ball back, you have to go down the field and score a touchdown if you're down by 4. If you kick the field goal, you just have to go down the field and kick a field goal, and at least gives your kicker a chance. Scoring a touchdown, 80-plus yards and whatever, that's hard, especially against that defense. It's hard. Puts you in a not-so-good position. Again, not putting yourself in a good position to win. It's more complicated, and I definitely see the argument for going for it there and trying to get a touchdown. But if I was McVay, I should have kicked the field goal. If I was McVay, you kick the field goal. Make it a 1-point game, and if your defense can make a stop, you get the ball back and trust Matthew Stafford, who has been very clutch for you since he's been with the Rams, and especially in the postseason. I mean, in this postseason alone, he has 2 big comebacks against Carolina and against Chicago. So kick the field goal, trust that you'll get the ball back into Stafford's hands, and he'll take it to the promised land and kick another game and get you to the field goal range. But instead, you put in a position where they would have to go all the way and score a touchdown, and you gave Seattle at least a decent field position there where they have to start off and they go, okay, we just need a couple of first downs. Okay, we're still up by 4. We're up by a touch, not 7, but we're up by a touchdowns margin, right? Not a field goal. Again, momentum was there in the Rams side, but you gave it back to the Seahawks. And you didn't give Stafford a true position where he could get you in a position to win. You didn't. And what happened? Seattle did run the clock out. Rams had to take their timeouts, and the Rams didn't get the ball back till about 25 or so seconds left, down by 4. The game was over. The game was over by that point. It was over. So again, this one's more interesting. You could argue it was the right decision to go for it, but if I was Sean McVay, I would have kicked the field goal. I would have kicked the field goal if I was Sean McVay. But the Seahawks and the Patriots are on their way to the Super Bowl, and it should be an interesting one because I think it's either going to be close or I think Seattle blows out New England. But I think it's going to be close. New England's fought and battled all season long. They have defied the odds all year long. I think their defense will keep it close. I just think Seattle's defense is too good. This will be the best defense Drake May has played really all season. I think they're going to give May fits, and I think they'll make a play or 2 or 3, and I think Darnold will make some big throws, and I think they'll win the game in a close one, though. But we'll see. We'll see in the Super Bowl. I give the advantage to Seattle heading into this game. I have them having the advantage coming in, but it should be an interesting game. Speaking of Hall of Fame coaches, McVay and Payton are Hall of Fame coaches. They're going to go win one day. Bill Belichick reports were yesterday, so he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame this year. He seemed to be an absolute lock to get in first ballot. He seemed to be an absolute lock to get in first ballot, and he's not. Came out yesterday that Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And that has gotten everybody talking. Everybody is going crazy for it. Everybody is saying that's ridiculous. That's wrong. That's unbelievably stupid. It's petty. It's nonsense. Oh my gosh, the Pro Football Hall of Fame even released a statement. I'm just looking at it now. Wow. So the Hall of Fame just released a statement that it could remove voters who violated bylaws. Wow, this whole thing is getting weird and getting out of hand, getting weird here. I'm reading from Mike Garafolo here. This is from about an hour ago. Mike Garafolo says in his tweet, statement from the Football Hall of Fame doesn't name Belichick, but says if a voter violated the selection process bylaws, action will be taken, including removing the voter from the committee. This is getting weird now. This is getting interesting. And it's just like I think it was like what Dungy and Polian, Tony Dungy and Bill Polian were arguing that Belichick shouldn't be in because of Spygate and Deflategate. He's in first ballot because of Spygate and Deflategate. But now it's and Polian actually, I think today in an interview or in his show on NFL Network outright said like, hey, I voted for Bill Belichick in the Hall of Fame, so take that for what you will. But this thing's getting weird now. It's getting interesting. I mean, this will be interesting if is there going to be a voter redo? Is there going to be a voter recount? Is there going to be, a new voters now? This will be interesting because it's very unprecedented. This is unprecedented at a borderline future Hall of Famer who is the greatest head coach of all time. 8 Super Bowl championships as a coach, 2 as a defensive coordinator, 6 as a head coach. And he's not getting in first ballot. They gave him a year. Essentially, what we see is that they gave him a year penalty before actually voting him in the Hall of Fame. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Number one, Spygate and Deflategate. You can talk about it. But it does linger over Belichick. But Polian and Dungy, interestingly enough, where were they? With the Colts. Who did Belichick beat twice to win Super Bowls? The Colts, Dungy and Polian in 2003 and 2004. Who was his main rivals for at least the first 10 or so, 12 years, 10 years of that run. It was the Indianapolis Colts and Peyton Manning and Dungy and Bill Polian and those guys, And while Dungy and Polian and Peyton Manning, Peyton obviously wasn't part of the vote, but, they won their Super Bowl eventually in 2006 and beating the Patriots to win it, to win the AFC Championship. That's still a few more rings that maybe they feel they were robbed of because, especially like I said, 2003 and 2004, those were years that were Spygate years. So they probably feel a little slighted there. Like, hey, you cheated us to win Super Bowls, So you have Spygate and Deflategate. You have the fact that Belichick was a jerk to a lot of people, a lot of media people. And obviously, everyone talks about how much of a Grinch he was and how much of a Grinch he was or it still is to the press. You also have you also have the fact that I think today there's a lot of younger voters too who probably look at Belichick's success and say Tom Brady. They don't really give Belichick the credit for that success now. They say Tom Brady. Because they say, look at Belichick before Tom Brady with Cleveland. Look at Belichick after Tom Brady with the Patriots. Look at Tom Brady. Look at him right now with North Carolina. Look at Belichick right now in North Carolina. Look at him before Brady. Look at him without Tom Brady. Look at him with Tom Brady. Is that fair for Belichick? No, it's not fair. As a matter of fact, it's kind of dumb because he's the one that drafted Tom Brady in the first place. He's the one that drafted, coached, and developed Brady to help him become the greatest quarterback of all time in the first place. So why are we holding that against him? And then you have the other thing, which is Belichick and his reputation, right? Belichick's reputation has taken a serious hit overall in general, just in general. It's taken a serious hit. The perception of Belichick and his reputation have taken a serious hit over the last couple of years now. He has gone from looked at as the best, and it's a combination of a lot of things. Heck, I'll even point to the Apple documentary, on the 10-part documentary. I think it was 10 parts about the Patriots on Apple TV. And a lot of it was crapping on Belichick, crediting Robert Kraft and crapping on Bill Belichick. And then, of course, obviously you have the things with his girlfriend and everything like that. I don't want to get into that, but you have all that stuff that goes on. And we've seen it. There's that famous video of him interviewing in North Carolina. We're doing an interview. I think it was like Inside the NFL, that everyone was talking about. Belichick's reputation has taken a serious hit over the last few years, So I think that has hurt him too. But is that fair to track him, to take him off the Super Bowl, to take him off the Hall of Fame for just 1 year and not make him first ballot as punishment? Not really. You're still putting him in eventually anyway. And he's a 6-time Super Bowl champion coach. You're not going to leave him out. But it just seems, it's a combination, it seems, of pettiness, spitefulness, jealousy, all that stuff. And look, I'm a Ravens and a Jets fan. My two teams have gone to battle with Bill Belichick's Patriots many, many times in both, not only the regular season, but in the playoffs as well. I have watched my two teams, the Ravens and the Jets, play so many big games against Belichick's Patriots. Growing up, it's like you despise Belichick and you despise Brady. I've been there. But of course, you understand that they're the two best at what they do. Belichick is the best at what he does ever. We're never going to see a coach like him again. We may never see that. I mean, really, we talk about Andy Reid. He's great. Hall of Famer, first ballot. He's still not Belichick. Sean McVay is amazing. He's a great coach. He's not Belichick. So many great coaches are trying to reach where Belichick is. And they're just, they will have great careers, but it's super, super hard to do what Belichick was able to accomplish the Belichick's accomplishments. It's super hard. It's rare. It's literally never been done. So we may never see it again. But to deny him first ballot Hall of Fame, it's just for the reasons that they're giving him, spite, pettiness, whatever, it's very, very weird. And now, obviously, you're seeing, and now the reaction to it is also very, it's definitely negative to it. A lot of people are coming out. Patrick Mahomes, the face of the entire sport, came out and said, that's wrong. That's ridiculous. Patrick Mahomes came out and said, that's wrong. Patrick Mahomes. When Patrick Mahomes, the face of the league, the best player in the whole sport, comes out and says, that one's wrong, you got that one wrong, you got it wrong. And like I said, now you got the statement with from the NFL Hall of Fame voting. It's they're going to have to fix it. Again, I don't know. Again, I'm not as astute or an expert on the votings of the Hall of Fame and such, for either sport, for any sport, really. I don't know if they could go back and do a redo. I don't know if they can do that. Probably not. But boy, the outcry over this and the discussion over it is just not a good look, especially, especially when the Super Bowl is coming up. That's the whole festival, right? That's the whole festivities, right? When the Super Bowl comes around, we talk about there's the Hall of Fame, right? And they announce the names for the Hall of Fame right there in Super Bowl week. It's a very big omission and certainly a damper that the greatest coach of all time, who was up first ballot, is not going to get in because of jealousy, spite, petty, like agendas. It's not going to be a good look on when do they announce the Hall of Fames? For the Friday or Saturday before the Super Bowl? I think it's either Friday or Saturday before the Super Bowl, or one of those days. It's not going to be a good look when those Hall of Famers like Drew Brees and Fitzgerald, those guys are going to be announced, obviously. Definitely Brees and Fitz, especially Brees. Those guys are automatics. They're going to get in. It's not a good look when Belichick is not going to be a part of that ceremony, and he's not going to be up there he's not going to be up there on that podium. And it's certainly not going to look great come August when they have the ceremonies and he's not there to get his gold jacket and his bronze and his bronze, the bust. It's not going to be a good look. And I think the NFL knows that the Hall of Fame voters effed up to keep PG. I think they know the voters screwed up here. So very I'm very interested to see what comes next. And the fact that the NFL Hall of Fame came out with a statement pretty much talking about this, very interesting. In other coaching news, Todd Monken is now the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So the Cleveland Browns and Todd Monken are reunited. Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator previously with the Browns back in 2019. He is now their new head coach. And I say good for him. I'm happy for him. He's a good offensive coordinator. Obviously, he's been waiting for his opportunity to get a head coach for years. He finally gets it. Obviously, you think about the Giants, right? John Harbaugh was kind of looking for him to become his offensive coordinator. Now that's obviously not going to be. So who will be the Giants offensive coordinator now? We'll find out. But the biggest thing to come out of this was that the Cleveland Browns players are not happy. And Cleveland Browns coaches, including one Jim Schwartz, ain't happy. Jim Schwartz reportedly went to the players, went to the coaches and says, I'm not coming back, because he only wanted to be the head coach. And when they passed him up for Todd Monken, he said, I'm not doing this. And he left. And Browns players reportedly are not happy. So it's nothing against Todd Monken. Monken, I'm rooting, I'm happy for him that he gets a head coaching job. He's earned it. and I also do think he was unfairly criticized in Baltimore during the 2025 season. But the whole ruckus it has caused just continues to show how poorly run the Browns are and how poorly Jimmy Haslam has run things. And it also still doesn't make any sense why Andrew Berry is still there. It still doesn't make any sense why he's still there. But now Jim Schwartz is available as defensive coordinator. It's too bad the Jets can't get him because they already hired their defensive coordinator. The Jets' new defensive coordinator is a former assistant of Aaron Glenn from Detroit, Brian Duker. He is their new defensive coordinator. But if I'm the Ravens, man, he'd look good as a Ravens defensive coordinator. Now, it'll be interesting to see how much that would mesh with Jesse Minter. But if you're looking for a bright defensive mind to really help out and also kind of be an assistant head coach, because Jim Schwartz has experience as a head coach, but to also kind of, help out Minter in that process, almost like he could, be a defensive coordinator / assistant head coach, defensive coordinator and assistant head coach, Jim Schwartz could be. That could really help Jesse Minter as he, this is a big year for Jesse Minter. He's kind of expected to go to this poor dude in his first year is expected to go to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. That's the expectation for Jesse Minter. That's the whole thing of taking this Ravens job. It's a great job to take because you can win right away, but AFC Championship, Super Bowl, that's a lot to ask in year one. So given somebody on the staff like Jim Schwartz could certainly help him out there. So Schwartz can help out the Ravens in more ways than one other than just coaching up the defense. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm on the phone with him right now and getting him in the building like tomorrow, And hey, if Jim Schwartz is upset and ticked off with the Browns, hey, maybe that's a good, you get him and you have him coach up, against and beat the Browns twice a year, right? Beat the Browns, right? Maybe he can also give you also the Ravens offense over the last several years has struggled against the Browns defense because they've been so good. He can give you a few pointers on how to beat that defense. So, but San Francisco, I read, is interested in him. So he is a hot name all of a sudden on the market, and the fact that he's out there in the market, that's a big one. Will he take a year off? Who knows? But that's a hot defensive coordinator name on the market now. I wonder if the Raiders and the Cardinals are still the only two teams left without head coaching jobs, filled. I wonder if the Raiders and the Cardinals ask him to come for an interview. I wonder if they do that, especially the Raiders. I can see the Raiders and Jim Schwartz fitting in nicely, but a interesting turn of events with Cleveland. They hired Todd Monken. And Jim Schwartz is now out the door. Reportedly, seems like he's out the door. The Browns obviously are going to try to bring him back, but Schwartz said, I either get the head coaching job or I'm out. And apparently he was really ticked off and upset that he was passed off for Todd Monken. Something against Todd Monken, obviously. Like I said, he deserves it. He's worked hard for a head coaching job, but certainly not ideal for the Browns to lose their top defense, their top coach, just in general. Or their top assistant coach in general because of this. So, and he's now on the market now. So we'll see where he ends up. But Todd Monken is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And obviously the biggest thing here for the Cleveland Browns and for Todd Monken was this hire. To go back to what Monken can add is, what does he feel about Shedeur Sanders? What does he feel? When he watches the film of Shedeur Sanders, what does he see? Does he see a franchise quarterback that he can mold, or a quarterback with potential that he can mold into a franchise quarterback? Or does he see, he's got talent, but it's just not there. But he hasn't really gotten it yet, and he's not ready to start yet. So, does he look at Shedeur and say, he's my week one starter, or does he say, I need to find somebody else for now? Be interesting to see what Todd Monken sees in the film with Shedeur Sanders. But Monken's new head coach, Jim Schwartz, is out there on the market now, supposedly. So from the NFL to we got a half hour. We got 30 more seconds left, so I'll recap Raw just quickly. CM Punk and AJ Styles main event at Raw on the last Raw before the Royal Rumble. Had a pretty good match that was interrupted by a Finn Balor interference. And Finn Balor, so it looks like the Finn Balor CM Punk feud is going to continue, which I'm very up for. I thought they had a fantastic match last week. They had segments with Finn and Liv Morgan in the back, and Finn and CM Punk in the back. So this was really a Raw built around Finn Balor. Like, it's interesting. This go home show to the Royal Rumble was essentially built on a guy who is reportedly, as of now, not in the Royal Rumble match. We don't know if Finn. I mean, maybe he gets in there. I'm going to guess he does. But as of now, he's not scheduled to be in the Rumble. So, but I thought it was interesting that Finn was this whole show was pretty much booked around Finn. He had the segments with Punk and Liv backstage, and then he comes in, interferes in this dream main event that everybody was looking forward to with Punk and AJ. So it's interesting that Punk and Finn are going to continue their feud, and I would guess their next match, while it won't be on Saturday, it will be in Chicago in the Elimination Chamber next month, because Punk beat Finn in Ireland. So now Finn says, I'm going to beat you in Chicago, in your hometown. From Punk to Finn to AJ. It really does feel like AJ Styles' last match will be at the Royal Rumble. I'll make my predictions for the Royal Rumble on Friday. But if AJ Styles' last match on Monday Night Raw was a disqualification, that's a bummer. And I understand you don't want AJ to take a pinfall, and you also don't want Punk to take a pinfall, obviously. It's a title match. It is a bummer, though, if his last match is on a disqualification. I think I'd rather take Punk beating him than the disqualification. And you don't want AJ to go out like that, but it does feel like that. It does feel like the Royal Rumble will be he had a great match with Shinsuke Nakamura on Saturday Night's Main Event the other day. Definitely their best match that they've had in WWE. But it definitely feels like this is it. It definitely feels like he's going to lose to Gunther and he's going to retire. And it really is a bummer, because it does feel like he's got so much left in the tank. But also, again, you want to give him his flowers for a year. Kind of like what we did with John Cena. You want to give him his flowers for a year, and for it to end so soon when the year just started, it's a bummer. And it does feel that way. I don't know if something, and then after the show on Monday, him and Punk embrace and hug. So, man, that could have been the one and only time we see Punk and AJ Styles wrestling in a match on WWE television. It really feels like it. And look, and I will say, if it is Styles' last match on Saturday, at least he's going out doing great. At least he's going out, having great matches. I watched Goldberg retire, and his match quality had obviously Goldberg's match quality had never been the best. This dude isn't Punk or Styles or Okada or Omega or whoever, or Danielson. But, he went out with a couple of some lagging, boring matches, Goldberg. John Cena obviously was putting on some really good matches in the second half of his run, but over the last few years, his match quality definitely did slip. It wasn't just this past year. It was, this year in the first half, but it was definitely over the last several years you saw his match quality definitely dipped. At least you can't say that with AJ Styles. At least you can't say that with Bryan Danielson too. They were still putting on great matches. So you're at least going out saying, hey, I left it all out there, and I still can go out saying I was still really, really good. My gosh, look at The Undertaker. How many awful matches did Mark Calloway have prior to AJ Styles' match with him, prior to the match with Styles? The cinema match. How many awful matches did Mark Calloway have? How many awful ones did Taker have? It's awful. A lot of awful ones. So if this is it for Styles, at least he gets to go out saying, hey, I was still putting on some great matches, and he gets to have one last great match with Gunther, who's probably maybe the best wrestler in the company. It's either him or Io Sky. But still, it's a bummer knowing that it might end abruptly, where it's kind of like that. And it's just at the beginning of the year. And you'd like to see him. And I understand too, this is his 10th anniversary, right? The Royal Rumble, he debuted in the Royal Rumble 10 years ago. 10th anniversary, 10 years later, hey, I'm going out. I entered the Royal Rumble in WWE, and I'm leaving WWE in the Royal Rumble. I guess I can see it, but it would have been nice for him to get that last WrestleMania match, right? His last WrestleMania match was a loss to Logan Paul. Can we please take that away? I mean, come on. Let's not have his last Rumble match be against Logan Paul, of all people. But but we'll find out on Saturday if this is AJ's last match, but if this is it for AJ. But if it is, shoot, it's another career that has laid the groundwork and built the build the building blocks for future wrestlers looking like AJ Styles, right? It's Styles, it's Punk, it's Danielson. These were all guys that laid the foundation for guys their size and to succeed in the biggest wrestling company in the world, because they never saw anything in those guys until Eddie Guerrero and CM Punk, Danielson, even Chris Jericho, AJ Styles succeeding in TNA and Ring of Honor, New Japan, and those guys. They didn't think they had it in them because of their size, but they came in and said, size doesn't matter. We're really good at what we do. We can get over. And they proved it, especially AJ Styles, So we'll find out. We'll see. I would hate to see his last match on Raw be a disqualification finish, but we'll see on Saturday against Gunther. Also on the show, there was a great 6-woman tag with Riho and Stephanie against Liv, Raquel, and Roxanne. That was a great 6-woman tag match. And Raquel did a really good promo on Stephanie later on in the show. Raquel's been on a roll lately. I wouldn't be surprised if they had Raquel go over in this feud, in this match, and when they have it and win the title. They're gonna have a street fight next Monday night in Philadelphia. I wouldn't be surprised if Raquel won, just to kind of throw a little bit of stuff in there before WrestleMania. Because Raquel, certainly, this is the best I've seen Raquel Rodriguez since her NXT days. Heck, this is even better than her NXT days, and this is the best I've seen of her. And she certainly is on a roll. She's on a roll. So it wouldn't surprise me next Monday night if she wins and beats Stephanie. So it's going to be those two against each other in a street fight in Philadelphia next Monday night. It was a weird segment with Pierce and Braun and everything like that. Like, he just pretty much said that all of the divisions in the Rumble, okay, whatever. It just felt weird. It was a very weird segment with Braun as the follow-up to the last couple of weeks. But I guess we'll see at the Rumble. Maybe there'll be a continuation to it. But yeah, that was Monday Night Raw, essentially. I'm trying to remember. I know Rey Mysterio had an injury, but it seems like he's okay. So that's good. Obviously, Rey Mysterio is another one. He's another one. I should mention Rey Mysterio. He's another one that laid the foundation for a lot of wrestlers looking like him to have success. And, Rey's in his mid-50s, early mid-50s. Enjoy it. He might be on his last year or two or whatever before he finally hangs up his boots. And we need to appreciate him too, as long as we have him, because he's still incredible. Rey Mysterio is still really, 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 really good, when he goes out there in the ring. So, but that was Monday Night Raw. NXT last night, they're still trying to figure out their men's roster. It seems they're pushing Carter right now, but they're really thin right now in the men's roster, men's division right now. They're really pushing the women's tag team division. Noticed a few people not on the show: JC Jane, Sol Ruka, and there was another one who I didn't see. Oh, Blake Monroe. Apparently, Blake Monroe was on the show, but it looked like a lot of her stuff was taped in advance. So, Sol Ruka, JC Jane, Blake Monroe, look out for them being in the Rumble on Saturday in the Women's Rumble. I could definitely see it. So Dynamite is tonight. On tonight is it's headlined by Chris Statlander facing Tekla for the AEW Women's Championship. That should be in the main event. I'm hoping it's in the main event of the show. I think it's in the main event. FTR versus Davis and Doyle for the Tag Team Championship. Swerve versus Andrade. That's right, Andrade. Jon Moxley and Ace Austin for the Continental Championship. In a Continental Championship eliminator match. I hate those. Sorry. Kenny versus Rocky Romero and MJF promo, and Mark Briscoe versus El Clone for the TNT Championship. I expect Mercedes Moné to show up in the main event for Statlander and Tekla. At least I think they're going to be in the main event. But I expect, of course, Statlander to retain. So that's Dynamite for tonight. So on Friday, I will be back and I will talk about SmackDown, talk more about obviously the Pro Bowls this weekend. So no real NFL football. There is the Pro Bowl. Friday, we're going to be talking more major. Well, so Friday, we'll kind of take a break from the NFL. We will talk about Belichick if there's more going on with it, coaching news, obviously, but mostly it's going to be baseball on Friday. And we'll talk baseball on Friday. We'll talk SmackDown, and I'll make my Royal Rumble predictions for the 2 Rumble matches and the other 2 matches themselves. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'd greatly appreciate it. Give this video a like, share, subscribe. I will see you all on Friday. Have a great night and take care.